Okay, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? All right.
You're on mute, Roger.
All right. Okay, good morning. Can you hear me okay? All right. So, seeds and fruit. So, having studied Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching for quite a while, he talks quite a bit about, watering seeds of love and compassion in our practice, and avoiding planting seeds of greed, hate, and delusion. And I'm drawn to, when I'm thinking of like Rumi's poem that I read, flow down, down, down in ever widening rings of being. I think of those rings of being as the vibration of our aliveness, and that aliveness, as he said, Conley says earlier in the book, things aren't what we think they are. So that aliveness isn't what we think it is, but we make up stories about it being greed, hate, or delusion, or love and compassion. But what is it really? So Rumi says, think of who created thought. In Reb Anderson's teaching is, things aren't what we think they are. Not only are they not what we think they are, but they're free of what we think they are. So the absence of what we think about things is the way they really are. And I think Ben here does a good job of talking about how. What does he say? Let me look at the book here. The metaphor of karmic seeds in the field of mind or consciousness help us see that we can cultivate wellness. So, and that combined with the teaching of impermanence, that we realize that because things are impermanent, we don't know what they are, and everything is just flashing by. Everything in our life is just flashing by. Anything is possible, and anything is possible to accept. And we can be free, cultivate the freedom to water seeds of love and compassion. And, also in those rings of being flowing down, we allow our attention to fall back, to relax back, and go deeply into the source. So I think of the flowing down, the vibrations of the flowing down is the love and compassion coming down, because I still think in terms of images of above and below. So the seeds of compassion and love are coming down, and also there's an opening to the dark, murky depths of the Alaya Vijnana. And I was talking with someone yesterday about saying what monsters are there in the Alaya Vijnana. And I was kind of like, well, they're not what we think they are. And what practice is about, and I like this chapter because he's talking about the paramitas, although he doesn't really mention the paramitas much, but he does mention them. This practice is about having a harmonious relationship between the inner and the outer, between the love and the compassion, the seeds of love and compassion, and whatever dark seeds of suffering are coming up from the bottom, from the Alaya Vijnana. So we learn to cultivate a harmonious relationship. And none of it is what we think it is, but we can't find the separation. If we look deeply, we can't find the separation between the good and the bad, the love and the hate. If we remember to not grasp at the thoughts, that things aren't what we think they are. And we cultivate the courage to face and not turn away from what's arising from below that may seem like scary monsters at times. And I've been noticing that my pulse is faster in the last few weeks, and maybe it's part of the shock I went through with this hurricane. Maybe it's the impending election, and maybe it's karmic seeds from millions of years ago, like he's talking about, that there's more energy just kind of activated and let loose. And so I'm remembering what Kwang Roshi said, that Zen is the aliveness we bring to each moment. And so I'm trying to harmonize, although I'm allowing more the harmonization of the inner and the outer, the negative and the positive. And learning to give away and offering all of my experience as a gift, like Reb says. And so there's another little phrase from Rumi, where he says, allow yourself to silently be drawn back by the stronger pull of what you really love. And I was relating that phrase, to what Ben is talking about, the Wheel of Samsara on page 44, where we find ourselves dully scrolling on a screen or inexplicably bereft while walking down a rainy street, or annoyed with ourselves or our colleagues. So we tear at the subtle fabric of interdependence that supports billions of living beings as we chase temporary safety, pleasure, or convenience. Samsara, the wheel of suffering, rolls on, powerful and fast. So if we feed those seeds, they grow. The fear, the desire, the personal desire and fear, if we feed those seeds, they grow. But once we awaken to the possibility that what we're really made of is something much, much bigger than this personal self, and that we can't really find this personal self. But as Reb says, if we learn to give away all of our experience as an offering, we learn not to grasp, not to turn away. And there is a sense of a larger presence, a stillness, a silence, and an unconditionally welcoming presence. So what's been feeding my aliveness and enthusiasm, aspiration for Buddhahood lately is realizing that what Buddha really meant when he touched the earth and said, I together with all beings attain the way. It's the power of all beings. It's not the power of some abstract idea out there in the vast cosmos. It's the aliveness of this universe that is moving through us. And Ben mentions at one point in the chapter, he mentions there's all these chemical reactions, countless chemical reactions going on inside us all the time that we're not even aware of. Much less can we control them or resist them. So if we look deeply at the truth of impermanence, all of our experience is already being offered. It's arising from mind or infinite consciousness or Buddha, nature, cosmic consciousness, whatever you want to call it. It's arising. That's what it's arising from and within. And it's always dissolving faster than we can imagine. And in that way, it's all being offered to the mysterious life force that we are. So we join the offering. We don't attain a state of offering. We just be still and know that we are God, or I am God, or the I am of identity that we share with all beings. So that power of all beings together, that's the source of the aliveness and the fundamental empowerment that he's talking about comes from this attitude of acceptance, from the mindfulness. He says, cultivation of awareness of interdependence, non-duality, and actions of body, speech, and mind that emerge from those 4 root practices. So there's more I could say. We could say a lot more. So I'll be interested in hearing how you guys interpreted the chapter, what you got out of it.
Thank you, Roger. One of the things I've come to in the last couple weeks is that I've finally found a definition of reincarnation that I could live with. that felt synonymous with our teachings and with the Dharma, and also I think from a rational standpoint, and for me, reincarnation occurs with every new thought that I have. Reincarnation of my nature, my own true nature within each thought. And what this chapter and what your talk did is that for me it yields another definition of karma that I can feel comfortable with. That works for me, I guess, in the typical, if you want it and it works, keep it, and if you don't, it doesn't, throw it out. And for me, it's each thought is karma. Each practice, each paramita that we engage in is, what potentially occurs down the road with that. And for me, that's a very soothing way of recognizing it. And the practice changes. Once again, my definition of practice changes. It seems like it evolves constantly. And the practice does become, as you said, Roger, in terms of being able to make the inside and the outside alike, the same, or realize that they are the same all the time anyway, and that being able to be congruent, and that I can stop. I think I've been on such a search. I don't mean just a search for meaning or purpose or trying to explain everything. That has been occurring, but I think in my life, I think I've been so restless. And I think that restlessness has emerged out of a constant samsara, constant, making these stories up, and the stories about, hey, I definitely need a new Porsche, or I definitely need another trip to Europe, or geez, let me build another house. It's like this constant yearning and searching, and it's gone and going and going and going, and it's I'm feeling like that's coming to a nice closure at this point for me, because I wanted, I think we all come to Buddhism in different ways, and we seek in different ways and for different reasons. And I think part of what I wanted to find was some peacefulness. I just wanted to find, a place where, I can, as Frank says, sit there in the nursing home. I wanted some peace and just being able to, this is good. Life is good. And I realize I have a tremendous amount of control over that now, at least the illusion of control over. And if I can refine my practice and continue to live um, in correspondence with that little boy I was at 3. So, thank you. Excellent thought.
The seeds and the fruit are the karma. We would talk about it. I was thinking to a certain extent how America got to be where we are today. America has some of our own karma, which is pretty bad, you know. Which how we treated indigenous people, how we treated the African Americans, but then and all these things have sort of come home to roost now in most in sort of like a sore, ready to sort of burst almost like it's got like something's got to happen with it right now. And for all the sins America has had, we're sort of now it's coming to some sort of I don't know. The fruit is coming out of the seed, you know. At the same time, in my own life, I'm really pretty clear about sort of who I am and where I am. You know, I was visiting some of my Trump friends this weekend, and I asked them. I said, "These are people that are more religious than I am, more patriotic than I am, more allegedly conservative than I am. Yet they're going totally opposite. You know, and for me, it's so clear as who you are every day is the most important thing. You know." So these next 15 days come out, I have written a sign in my kitchen, and it's hanging in my kitchen, written by the great man. It says, "It's on schedule." That's in my kitchen, you know. I have the words of the great teacher, Zen Master Mish. He was here to say to me, "It's on schedule. Let's get a bagel." And so I'm all my friends are crossing who run the Pennsylvania line. All my friends are crossing the line into Chambersburg, and they're all working. We're doing stuff every day, either for North Carolina or for Pittsburgh. At the same time, when I go home tonight, I say, "Okay, this is not real. I'm acting every day as if it is. I'm doing the best I can, but in the end, it's on schedule. It's going to do what it's going to do. So let's do that. And what you can't control, Thomas, you're right, is our own heart. You know what I mean? And our own life, and our own kindness. And Claudette, I'm not going to get a gun. I'm gonna work in my garden. I had it's frosted up here, so I got all my tomato plants down yesterday. Took down my tomato towers, planted some fall lettuce. I sat looking and think to myself as well, no matter what happens on the 5th of November, lettuce should come up. So we have to get ourselves through the next thing. And by the way, it'd be a wonderful opportunity for us the next 4 years, one way or the other. Wonderful opportunity for Buddhism, for enlightenment, and for kindness. You know, it's a soil which our seed can really grow. So I'm looking forward to the next 4 years, no matter what happens, especially here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roger. Tom, I'm sorry I got accidentally disconnected while you were speaking. I like this chapter this week, this whole reminder of karma and karmic seeds that we're planting each day. And as I listened to Doc speak, one of the things that came up for me was like the karmic seeds of America. And I know there's a lot of anxiety about the election, and I find myself relaxing a little. There is a fear that, okay, you know, these karmic seeds are going to manifest and Kamala won't win, but there is that fear because we have the deep karmic seeds of all this stuff of America. And I'm thinking, you know, oh my gosh, the first woman president is going to be a black woman? Like, hell no. That I think will be the consensus of America. That's my thought. And then the fear arises like, you know. So I'm prepared for whatever the outcome is. But it really brought up that whole idea of the things that are manifesting may have been planted hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. But for my personal life, it's like, how can I be more compassionate with it? I get angry, especially with my partner, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, why can't I get this and let go of these seeds that I'm planting here now for the future and be more aware. But one of the things the chapter spoke about is mindfulness, that mindfulness, mindful intention and attention really helps with the karmic seeds that we're planting or even manifesting that, because when we're not conscious or paying attention, we're just reacting from whatever seeds were planted. But with mindfulness, we're a little bit more aware, and I don't know, that's my intention, to really be more mindful. Like, I'm reading it and I'm saying, why can't I get there so many years now? Why am I still caught up in this cycle? I know better. So trying to have a little compassion for that. Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to being here because it helps to remind me. So thank you.
Well, I will add on to that. I am super excited about what's happening. And I'm super grateful for this book and this chapter in particular. And I'll tell you why. So I think he says in there, you have to practice as if your practice means something. You have to have trust and faith that our practice matters. And I don't know why that just struck me right into the heart. Like, I've had doubt. And the reason why I've had a lot of this doubt, not the great doubt, but like the everyday painful doubt, is I think because of this notion of determination. There is one of my favorite authors, he's like an anthropology rock star, Robert Sapolsky. He wrote Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. He's like a big, writer in the world and mindfulness and so forth. But anyway, he has this new book out that I have. It's called Determined. And he has his own story, Jewish background and so forth. But apparently he undoes this notion of free will. And this is the work that I work in health equity. It's called the political and the social determinants of health, which basically posits that health is not an individual acquisition or any individual behavior, but it's an accumulation of determining factors. And I have this book, Determined, sitting in my queue, and I just couldn't bring myself to read it because it is so daunting, the hopelessness of it. And what Ben Conley did for me in this chapter is that he pointed out that it's, yes, there's the storehouse, which I'm still trying to get my head around that because it's full of, but also apparently there's nothing to be full of. It's empty. I mean, I'm gonna figure out that, or we're gonna read about that. I'm sure the fullness of the emptiness or whatever, I'm sure something good is coming. But at any rate, this idea that karma is an opportunity. So there's the storehouse, blah, 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 this horrific situation that we find ourselves in, and then this opportunity at the intersection of realizing it to bring these practices, as Kogetsu said, of mindfulness of, I think he says mindfulness of the body, the emotions, the awareness of interdependence, and the awareness of non-duality. So at these moments of desperation, and I do have many, because I look at these things that how could we not have seen this before, and how do I translate this in a way that is beneficial to people, especially, not destroying my nervous system right now. You know, and this is the invitation from this chapter, I think, is what can I offer that is beneficial? And again, it's just this attention, which includes intention to help and to heal. So I love this. I love this chapter. I really enjoy this book. Thank you again, Donna. The thing that stood out for me was the quote by Cornel West that he puts in there. The only way to be a long distance freedom fighter is to find joy in the struggle, joy in empowering others. So I love that. I love Cornel West's work. And just realizing, as Kogetsu said and others have said, I don't think it's fair to put what we have done all on Trump. His manifestation, I think we have to own that we created this monster. Likewise, I don't think it's fair to put on Kamala being the savior of America, you know. But this emergence of the collective Buddha, of all of us losing this manas situation, where we're able to merge together and work together like ants in a pile or some other hopeful species, I think is an opportunity that we'll have. And also the realization that either way, whatever is going to happen is probably going to happen with Kamala or with Trump. You know, the seeds are, one person is not, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong. I don't think one person is going to be able to shut down the storehouse of the karmic arising. I think we're all going to have to help it and, you know, not add fuel to the violence through our compassion. Just two quick logistics things. I do have to leave after the last speaker today early, and I did speak with Jeff Mindy, and so there's a possibility that he might be joining us. He had a situation with Monday, so I hope that's okay. I told him we were still open at any time. Thank you.
Like to speak. All I can think of now, there was a movie called A Serious Man some years ago by the Coen brothers. And in this one scene where this kid is like, I think he was stoned on pot and listening to Grace Slick and that group. And, you know, he talked to the rabbi about his bar mitzvah and you know, I can't, oh my God, I can't remember. If you can trust yourself when everyone around you is lying and all. And the rabbi said to him, just be a good boy. And that's what it comes down to. Just live what you were taught about being a good person. You know, karma is complex, you know, billions and billions of things since the beginning of time. Just be a good person. Everyone knows what that means. And, you know, sometimes it might mean not getting ahead. Like, you might, if people ask you to falsify things. I remember being in a class where there were nurses who worked for drug companies and they wanted them to sign on to falsify some experiment, something like that. And they had to quit because that they didn't want to compromise their conscience or their credentials. I mean, life puts you in all these situations. And if I say go with what's true. And my hand therapist recently just said, well, you have to ask, what are the conditions in the United States? What did people feel they were lacking? What brought them a Trump about? In other words, what's wrong with this country? All the things that people think they aren't or don't have that they think Trump is going to give them. You know, he played on things, and we need to fulfill those things that make it so that a Trump would never come about. And for me, it's everyone being in greed, you know, everyone wanting these illusions that if they have more of this, they'll be happy. Rather than you just should be happy with having a roof over your head and food. You don't need 1,000 Porsches or any of that. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for all the wisdom and love you shared this morning. And that's really helping me. You know, just looking deeply, what's come to me is there's just it's gradual. It's a gradual intuitive sense of the transparency of life. And that life is not about us as separate beings, separate body minds. It's about all of us together. And I'm a little uncomfortable in the midst of all this turmoil in our culture. You know, people that share they share my horror at the prospect of Trump again, you know, but they keep trying to tout how great we are, you know, because we have bigger economy or we have a stronger military and all this stuff. It's not about that. It's about the power of all of us together, and that really supports us in facing these demons we have, the suffering we have, realizing that it is something that can be accepted if we look and bring afflictions to their end. I was going to read something of Reb, but on page 50 of Reb's book, he talks about how we end affliction, and Ben mentioned some of that too. By practicing the paramitas with our suffering, we can end the afflictions that come. At the end of affliction is no affliction. We see that it's not what we think it is. So I also wanted to give Linda a chance to say something if she wants.
Thank you. I must have read this chapter about 5 times. Each time, little pieces came out for me. You know, the part about mindfulness was kind of like the most familiar. I kind of skip over the Pali or Sanskrit words, which I don't know, and but I infer the meaning, I guess. Yeah. So all this. I guess this chapter was pointing to hope in a way, that things are going to happen, you know, outside my control or wishes. And I guess the challenge is to be with them in a way where you can be stable and loving and helpful. But that's like an ideal that I guess the challenge is to realize every day, because you know, like the part about emotion, is not new for me, but I still don't completely get it. That like I feel like I feel my emotion. I recognize it. I can be with it, like the fear or the mistrust. But it doesn't go away just because I'm with it. Um, but I also learn to control the story around it. Not to control it, but to realize when I'm making it worse by creating like more stories. And it happens like practically every day. That I'm catching myself doing things that I know better in terms of my own suffering and maybe in suffering for my husband or other people, but I guess I'm around him the most. So I don't know. I think the thing this group, this sangha, and just the little bits of reminders are meaningful. And I wouldn't be waking up early and getting dressed if it wasn't at this time. So I just want to say one other thing. I really relate to the idea of the seeds because not only can I recognize some of the seeds from my parents and my upbringing, but looking at the history, like I didn't really know my grandfather very well because he died when I was probably too young to be brave to ask questions and things, but like he came to the United States illegally from Ukraine or Russia or whatever part it was. And all I remember is stories from my mother about him, escaping the Cossacks and with violence and everything. And, I guess that's already been like generations that have lived with a certain kind of fear, and it's so easy to pass that fear down. And I actually catch myself with my son, not planting more seeds intentionally. So I noticed what I said was very disjointed, but in a way I felt like this chapter was too full. Like each page could have been a conversation. Thank you.
Well, one last thing that hit me, you use the word opportunity. Again, I think the word opportunity is, when I was a fireman, when a house caught on fire and it was an opportunity for us to be selfless and to be courageous and to be good human beings, to transcend our humanity to something that was so special. It was all done for boys and bases. So the fire was the opportunity for us to show who we truly are. And maybe that's a metaphor we should keep in mind as we head in the next 15 days. In the fire, there's an opportunity for selflessness, for love, for sacrifice, and for doing the right thing. So, my 2 cents.
I would just like to say something that Linda said. All the stuff that you mentioned from previous generations, there's a book, It Didn't Start With You. Many people have inherited trauma, and it is now proved that it can be, through epigenetics, passed on from succeeding generations. And my grandparents, too, escaping so many people of Jewish faith, Cossacks and all that. That's trauma. And that came to the United States, just like the history of slavery. That was trauma passed on. So people have to look at that, in terms of their own fears and all that. Well, where did it come from, And just at some point let it go, cry or scream or whatever, but get it out.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that science has caught up to this ancient wisdom in terms of epigenetics, and there's this potential for really causing genetic change. But I can't even, I don't know it well enough to really be clear, but I've read about epigenetics many times, and it does make sense to me.
I wanted to just add something else, Linda, to what you said, which I completely resonated with me as well. This idea of the awareness of the fear, the awareness of the anger, whatever it is, it doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make it go away. The awareness of trauma, the knowledge of trauma, transgenerational, etc. For me, it often makes it worse, like this whole determined situation. But I will say that, I think Ben in this chapter defines mindfulness as compassionate awareness. John Kabat-Zinn doesn't define it that way. He says bringing attention to the moment in a particular way without judgment. So for me, that is helpful when something arises, the anger. I have a judgment. I shouldn't be angry. I should be a good person. I'm not a bodhisattva in this moment, etc. But just dropping that and being, what is this? And not judging whether the anger and the trauma and the fear and the Trump and whatnot is good or bad. Just kind of like dropping that judgmental mind. And also, the sense of it passing, like this is temporary, it might come again, you might visit me again, but here you are now, anger. And I get to be compassionate with you and thank you maybe, because I don't really know if this is a bad thing or a good thing, right? That not knowing component of the awareness for me is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to end with a little passage from Thomas Merton. And I think what he's expressing in this is that, the whole thing about determined and being determined, it's, the Buddha's teaching is that we don't exist as separate body minds. And that's the intuitive understanding we come to. And so in that sense, there's no freedom for the separate self if the separate self doesn't really exist the way we think it does. There's no freedom there. There's no choice there. But what these teachers that are farther up the mountain are telling us, there is a spirit that's free of all of that. And so when we're talking about true freedom, it's the true freedom of surrendering to that, the stronger pull of that which we truly love that Rumi's talking about. So here's Thomas Merton. In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all those people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another, even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation in a special world, the world of renunciation and supposed holiness. This sense of liberation from an illusory difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud. I have the immense joy of being man, a member of a race in which God himself became incarnate. As if the sorrows and stupidities of the human condition could overwhelm me. Now I realize what we all are. And if only everybody could realize this. But it cannot be explained. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around, shining like the sun. But we have to keep trying to explain it.